So welcome to my Coffee with series. Today I have Waldo Stakes with us, who is the man building the rocket for Mad Mike Hughes, who intends to launch himself to space to see whether or not the Earth is flat or a sphere. How you doing, Waldo?
I'm doing good. Thank you very much.
Good. Well, I have here a picture of the rocket that you're talking about, and a lot of people have asked a lot of questions about the rocket and how it's going to be done. And there's some confusion between the rocket that to go to space and the steam-powered one. So maybe we could start with a little bit of clarification on that.
Okay. Mike, I've known Mike for about 7 years or so, and he basically builds steam rockets. They're based on the old Robert Truex design for what he called the 444 steam rocket. Essentially, you heat up 40 gallons of, 400 pounds of water to 400 degrees, and it gives you 4,000 pounds of thrust for 4 seconds. That was kind of the basis of the 444 rockets that were used on the Evel Knievel jump rocket, which Robert Truex designed in the early 70s. And Evel Knievel tried to get across the Snake River Canyon in 1974, I believe, and it wasn't very successful. They had two problems. One was the chute deployed prematurely, and the second one was the aerodynamics of the vehicle weren't exactly quite right, and it came off the ramp spinning. And I think it makes about 3 complete revolutions before the parachute finally comes all the way out. And they also Scott Truex, his son, later on, had a few rockets built for Eddie Braun, the stuntman, and they launched over the Snake River Canyon. The thing spun also, and it's kind of a spinning design. It wasn't intentional. It has a H tail on it. I call it an H tail. It's a tail. It looks like an H from the back, and those were used in bombers during World War II to make a very stable bomber. Because if your bomber's not stable, your bombs go everywhere, when you're bombing someplace. So they put these H tails on our B-25 or B-24 Liberator, and about 4 or 5 different British designs that use H tails. Very good for making a bomb run. Bad tails for flight rocket. So Mike kind of copied those. I met him. I can't remember if he called me or I called him. I think I probably called him, reading about stuff. He said, "Yeah, I'm building this rocket. I'm going to jump the Snake River Canyon," about 7 years ago, maybe 8 years ago. And I said, "Hey, well, how far have you got?" And he goes, "Well, actually, I've got the rocket built. Would you like to see it?" And that was the interesting thing about Mike. I get a lot of calls from people who build, want to build jet rocket motorcycles, jet rocket cars, flight rockets, all kinds of stuff. But very seldom do people actually build something. So at that time, Mike was pretty broke. He's living in his car. He has the rocket at a transmission place. That's a buddy of his somewhere down near San Bernardino, somewhere. I think it was in Redlands, I think. And I went to take a look at it, and he goes, "Well, what do you think?" I said, "It sucks. It'll kill you. The balance is off. The fins are too small. Your head's sticking out of the middle of it." It looked kind of sort of like an Evel Knievel design, but it had a blunt nose, which was okay because things only going 300-400 miles an hour. A blunt, rounded nose is actually a better idea. If you can imagine, think of World War II fighter planes. That was about their top end, between 300 and 400 miles an hour. And the fuel tanks they carried with them were very blunt and rounded. And that's the way they should be shaped for maximum efficiency at those philosophies. It changes all the time. As velocity goes up, goes down, the shape of these things is different. So I said, it just has a lot of bad things. That tail will make it spin. He didn't believe me until he started going back and looking at the Truex flight of Evel Knievel. He goes, "It does spin, absolutely. That's just a bad idea." I said, "You really have to make the thing look like a toy rocket, a kid's toy rocket. 4 fins, you have to put the center of gravity very far forward. And, tuck yourself down in there because even if you were to land on level ground with your head and body above the rocket itself, if it were to roll down a slight incline, it would crush you and kill you." So he made these changes and stuff, and he didn't have an engine. And he's like, "Well, what should I make the engine out of? I'm going to start building basically a steam rocket is just a vessel. It's a cylindrical tank with a hole in one end, and in the hole there's a nozzle on the end of that, and then in the hole is a cork. And what you do is you put hot water in this thing, and it'll start to build pressure like a tea kettle. And then you pull the cork, and of course the steam comes out and launches the thing. Actually,
is it really a cork, or what is it that really holds it?
No, it's actually a metal ram that fills that inserts into the throat of the nozzle. Okay. And it usually has a Teflon ring on it or a rubber seal, something to seal the water out. And it's held in there with pneumatic pressure. And in order to launch the rocket, you withdraw the ram and pull it out. And then the water, that is superheated water, flashes the steam in the nozzle. And and then that creates the thrust and pushes the rocket forward. So if you can imagine just a tea kettle and you get it really hot, and where the whistle is, you have it sealed off, and then you pop it open, and it'll blast out the tea kettle spout and push the tea kettle along. It's the same thing.
Yeah.
Water is very powerful as propellant. It's very powerful. Well, yes and no. I mean, water
you
rocket.
need to harness it.
Yes, and it has a pretty low ISP. And ISP means specific impulse, and it means kind of like pounds of thrust per second of propellant you burnt. Okay, like here's an example. A water rocket, a steam rocket, has an ISP of about, people say 100, but it's really about 50. Okay, so that is 50 pounds of thrust per gallon of water that you burn per second. Okay, it's kind of like that. That's how it is. That's how it's laid out pretty simply. We take the shuttle engines and the shuttle main engines. They have an ISP of about 465, and they run hydrogen and liquid oxygen in a bipropellant system. Combustion chamber, they burn the propellants under pressure. They come out of the nozzle and they make 465 pounds of thrust. He said it's much more efficient than a steam rocket, and the temperature is much greater. It's in the 6,000-7,000 degree range, whereas steam rocket is in a few hundred degree range. Does that help? I don't want to get too technical.
Yeah, all right. People, so that's the rocket that he already launched himself in, and he got hurt, and he's going to do it again, and hopefully not get hurt in a couple weeks here.
He has launched himself 3 times. Two times. And he's going to launch himself a 3rd time. And then they had a premature launch of one of the rockets. So he actually has launched 3 already so far. We're about to launch the 4th one. He's built 5 or 6 of them. But the first one, like I said, when I saw it, I go, no, I can't help you if you're going to be launching yourself, and this going to be responsible for your death. Because when you're dead, they'll turn around and go, look what Waldo did to you. So
you don't want to be involved. Yeah.
No. You got to be. I said, if you're going to actually build a flight rocket, let's build a flight rocket that you can survive. And at least with Daredevils, if you can give them 50-50, a 50-50 chance that they're going to survive, they'll usually take the chance.
Oh my gosh!
They just have that kind of. They have that kind of mindset. They're not like the average person. They're definitely never going to sell insurance for a living. They don't have that mindset. Their mindset is, he's like, Waldo, can you give me 50-50? And we'll work the bugs out of it. And you're right about there. And he'll go. He'll do it.
Wow. Okay. All right. So that's the steam rocket. And so then what is the one that's going to space?
Well, the rocket that we're going to send into space in is going to be a 1940s kind of concept. Okay. In the early mid I would say more like mid to late 1940s, the United States had some rockets, and they were working on the V2s that they brought back from Germany and stuff. But essentially, they didn't have they couldn't reach a very high altitude. I think a V2 was good for about 60 miles, And so space at that time and up until just recently, people claim space was about 62.8 miles. They call it the Kármán line, which was kind of set up by a professor at Caltech. His name was von Kármán. And so essentially it's the von Kármán line, but people just refer to it as the Kármán line. And that is where you're above. When you get to 62.8 miles, about 100 kilometers, okay, you are above 99.999. It goes about 999. That's the point. So 99.9999% of the atmosphere. Okay, so now you are in the vacuum of space.
Yeah,
so in theory,
there's not enough air to do lift-based
There's no air. Yeah, there's nothing. There's nothing. You are
Essentially,
in a
yeah.
vacuum. And if you were to get a tear in your spacesuit, you got about 15 seconds before you go unconscious and a minute before you're totally dead. So, aircraft are like that too. People have no idea how dangerous it is flying in an airliner. They take it for granted. But essentially, when you get an aircraft up, 35, 40,000 feet, pretty close to the, there's another line there where your blood starts to boil. Okay, and that's what happens, because your blood stays liquid here on the surface of the Earth because of air pressure. Basically, holds the molecules of your blood and your water and your body together, kind of close together, so they stay liquid. But once you get up to a high altitude where there's no pressure to do that, what happens is the molecules kind of push away against each other, they drift apart, and because of low pressure, and your blood will actually boil. It'll go right from liquid to gas, and your blood and all the liquids in your body will boil away from you. And in about 15 seconds, you're unconscious, and you probably will sustain permanent damage, even if somebody were to get you, in some sort of pressure suit or something quickly. But after a minute, you're gone. So that's the thing. Mike wanted to go to space. After we did the last steam rocket jump, he said, Waldo, could we go to space? And he had no idea how far space is or anything. I said, dude, it's a long way up there, man. It's a long way up there. In fact, only a couple of private guys have actually put a rocket in space. They were solids. They were solid propelled rocket engines. They're very simple. And I said, we'd have to do something different. So in the 40s, they came up with an idea. The Army did. Actually, before it was the Air Force. The Air Force came from the Army Air Corps. It was basically a branch of the Army. And then after the World War II, they separated and made it something different. And so the Army was launching what they called sounding rockets, which were, some exotic liquids and some solids, and they would hang them from a balloon. And a helium balloon would take them up 20 to 25 miles, and then the rocket would ignite. Some of the plans, the rocket actually flew through the balloon because they had very sharp, pointy noses and stuff, although it did hurt the performance. And some of the other ones, they disconnected the rocket from the balloon, and because the balloon lost its payload, it would drift away really quickly, and the rocket would fire and climb through. And they would go hundreds of miles, which was giving them a lot more data. Some of them, they put rats in, mice, insects, plants to see what the and then they would open a little door, and these things will all come back dead, and so they that's how
I
they
suppose
learned
they weren't putting them in spacesuits, right?
No, they ended up putting them in little kind of like plexiglass capsules and stuff like that. And actually, I want to say like when they used some monkeys and stuff at the White Sands, and they had little spacesuits for them, or early spacesuits. They really were just a pressure garment, with a little plastic helmet. I know it sounds silly, but they did do that. They were trying to. Most of our spacesuits were developed by a company called the Clark Incorporated, and they got them down to they build all the ones for the shuttles and at the ISS and all that. You'll see usually most of those suits are Clark suits. In fact, all of them. And I think they also build the ones for the SR-71. When they were flying the Blackbird, that's a very high altitude airplane, and also the U-2. So we're going to use that kind of a spacesuit, So essentially what this thing is, it's a rocket. It's hanging from a balloon. It's 22 feet long, and it has a hinge point in the center of it because in order for a rocket to fly stably, it needs what we call an aspect ratio. An aspect ratio is a good ratio of diameter to length. So say if the rocket is 1 foot in diameter, it starts to fly stably at 11.5 feet long. You see? So if you had a rocket that's 1 foot in diameter, if it's about 11.5 feet long, it'll fly relatively stably. If you got enough fins, you still got some air pulling on it, and it should fly pretty well. So this thing, because we're going to release it in an area where there is hardly any air, and then it's going to go up to where there's absolutely no air. We don't have the advantage of using fins in it because there's nothing for the fins to act on. See, a rocket, when you launch it from the ground, the fins help the rocket become stable and fly straight because they create an area of drag at the bottom of the rocket. They're like an invisible hand kind of holding the base of the rocket. So as the power of the rocket is thrusting down and the nose cone is cutting the air on top, this invisible hand, these tail fins, hold on to the base of the rocket and keep the rocket climbing straight. See how that works?
Yeah.
So the problem with... Go ahead.
The tail helps to aim, and that's why when, again, the Kármán line, where there isn't enough air to use air to steer. Yep.
Absolutely right. So that's the problem. See, it's okay when he's coming down, when he's going through reentry, we can have fins on the thing because it'll help stabilize it and fall. Okay, it's going to fall for pretty much pushing a half an hour. So let me just kind of I can get really complex here, but let me kind of simplify this. So imagine that a rocket of some sort is hanging from a balloon, and there's a guy in it. Okay. And the balloon takes him up to somewhere between 20 and 25 miles, and all that is a question of what the air temperature is like, all kinds of things, jet streams, how big of a balloon we can actually buy. And the balloon we're talking about buying now would be about 400 feet in diameter. It'd be the size of a 40-story building, okay? And they cost about $360,000. Yeah, that's not cheap. And the helium that would be in it would cost another $300,000. So I know you've seen these type of balloon launches, these helium balloon launches. It looks like a golf ball. The helium looks like a golf ball inside, like a woman's nylon or something like that. Just hanging from it. Well, that's how they start looking like I don't know, like a golf tee almost, or something like that. But once they get up to high altitude, the helium, because there's no air pressure to keep that sphere of helium contained, the helium expands out. And there's a point where they call the point of equilibrium. And what happens is that's where the balloon is as expanded as it'll be. Now it looks like an onion, okay? So imagine like that thing turned into an onion, and hanging from the onion is the rocket. And then what happens is the balloon doesn't want to climb too much anymore. It wants to kind of go sideways. So at that point, you make a decision if you're going to launch the rocket or not. And Mike will have two big buttons. This is the only controls he's going to have. I'm going to make everything mechanical and computer controlled. There's just not a lot to do. And what will happen is he'll decide, he pushes the red button, he'll be released from the balloon, he'll drop on the balloon, the parachutes will start their sequences. He'll just kind of fall for maybe about 11, 12 minutes, something like that. Just like Felix Baumgartner did and Dr. Alan Eustace did, same thing. The rocket will fall straight, and as it gets into denser air, it kind of has fins built into it, into the center section of it, and it'll fall pretty straight. And in the meantime, it'll be venting all the rocket fuel overboard. Now, the rocket fuel that this rocket will use is called hydrogen peroxide. When you think of hydrogen peroxide, you think of the fuel that I wouldn't say the fuel, but they just had an incident today where there was a hydrogen peroxide truck on the Grapevine, and it fell over. It was leaking like hydrogen peroxide. Okay, so it was a big mess. But the deal is, hydrogen peroxide, you would think of it as something women dye their hair with. They dye their hair blonde, or you put on a cut when you get a cut. It's a pretty good antibiotic. Yeah. But that type of hydrogen peroxide is probably 1 to 3%. Hydrogen peroxide. The rest of it is water, you see? But once you get the percentage of pure hydrogen peroxide up to about 90%, it's a very toxic material. In fact, if you get it on any hydrocarbons, most times it'll set it aflame. Okay, so if you were wearing like cotton clothes, jeans, blue jeans, and a flannel shirt, and somebody sprayed you with 90% hydrogen peroxide, you turn into a Human Torch. Okay.
Yeah, that oxygen wants to get off of there, that extra one, and it'll react with whatever it can get.
Hydrogen peroxide is H2O2, but see where it's different than water. Water is H2O, and hydrogen peroxide is H2O2. And what it is it's a chemical that has extra electrons. So what happens is if you give it something to react with, it'll definitely take the reaction and do it. So in a rocket engine, you run hydrogen peroxide through a catalyst pack. It's usually silver. It can be a lot of exotic metals, but silver is probably the most popular one. Yeah, platinum. That's another good one too. But silver is the cheapest and most logical one. So you basically you build a catalyst pack kind of like a stack of screens. And the screens are made of stainless steel, and then they're coated with silver, okay? And when you blow the hydrogen peroxide through these screens, it breaks the hydrogen peroxide down from H2O2 to H2O, which is water, and O2, which is oxygen. So it's a very green kind of rocket engine. Okay, the only problem is, okay, it does it at 1,340 degrees Fahrenheit. So what happens is the water instantly vaporizes and turns to steam and creates this like steam rocket, and it kicks the oxygen out. Now, there's so much oxygen it's creating and kicking out. It's so hot. If you were to add anything else to it, Chanel number 5, man, anything, you know, tuna fish, you know, you added anything to it, it'll burn it and it'll crease the impulse. A hydrogen peroxide rocket engine, according to NASA, theoretical ISP is about 170. When we used to run hydrogen peroxide dragsters at the 70s, which is kind of where I come from with all this stuff, we were getting ISPs of about 115 to 120. Some guys claim 130, but they were probably lying. And so you're getting 115 to 120 pounds of thrust for every pound of fuel you burn per second. Okay, so they were pretty efficient. I mean, the rocket dragsters of that time in the 70s, and they're banned now, still hold the quarter-mile record to this day. Okay.
What was what's the record holder?
Well, there's a couple.
Does it have a name?
On a track. Okay. The Conklin Comet, which was built by a company called Conklin. I don't know what they sold. I can't remember. But it was driven by Captain Ed Ballinger, who was a drag. They don't call drag racers drivers. They call them pilots. Okay. I don't know why, but they do. Oh. So he piloted the Conklin Comet to about 396 miles an hour in the quarter mile. Now the dragsters nowadays, the nitro fuel dragsters, are only reaching 330, something like that now. So they're still pushing almost 100 miles an hour, and slower than the rocket dragsters of the time from the 70s. But they only used to let us run 900 feet. Then we had to shut the rocket off. A quarter mile was 1,320 feet. So essentially, they would only let us run 900 feet, and we'd be putting the parachutes out and stuff. And I think the big reason why they said safety, because the NHRA turned on us, and the AHRA turned on us, the IHRA turned on us, and eventually there was no place to run your rocket dragster. Okay, the reason why all that happened was because you made the nitro cars look silly. You see. You know, what would happen is nitro cars, they're on the line and they're throwing flames out there, tossing or jumping and burning the tires off and smoke, and then they go, and then a rocket car comes up. And it doesn't make any noise really at all. They blip the engine once to heat the catalyst pack. They put it in line, and then, boom, it takes off and goes 100 miles an hour faster than the fastest dragster, see? So since all those dragsters were sponsored by all these companies, they didn't want us around, you see? So... yeah, that's kind of what happened to the whole thing. And over a period of time, they got rid of it. And so anyway, so that's on a track. Captain Ed Ballinger set the record on the track. And Kitty O'Neill, a woman, drove one of Kai Michelson's rocket dragsters to 412 miles an hour in the quarter mile at El Mirage Dry Lake, and then she crashed it. But still, you know, that's 100 miles an hour faster going today. So that's what happened. So imagine this rocket is hanging from this balloon, okay? And it has a 4-nozzle rocket engine. The catalyst pack fires through these 4 nozzles, and they kind of point out at about 45 degrees, and they're kind of just above the middle of this rocket. You know, if you've got any of the pictures up there and you're showing the people what it looks like, one of the pictures shows the jets coming from the 4 nozzles. And then there'll be a simple RCS system, which will be another set of nozzles that'll have like a pendulum in them. And as the rocket yaws right and left, because remember, we don't have the advantage of having fins or anything like that to stabilize the rocket, okay? As it yaws right or left, you know, these jets will fire, kind of little tiny jets will fire, probably in the maybe 50-pound range, and they will keep the rocket stable. So Mike will make the choice when he hits equilibrium to throw the red button, which will abort, or throw the green button. If he throws the green button, the rocket will instantly come on at 1G, disconnect from the balloon, and it'll hover there for a second. 1G means the rocket is firing at the weight of the rocket itself. Okay, now I believe the rocket will be somewhere around just under 1,800 pounds loaded, ready to rock and roll. And then he hits the green button, it lights those 4 nozzles up, and it hovers there for a second, and then it'll throttle up automatically. And it'll start picking them up somewhere around 3G is the goal. So about 60 miles an hour a second per second. So he'll accelerate, like in the first second or so, he'll be doing 60, and then he'll be doing 120, and then it'll be doing 180, and then it'll be just as fast. I'm telling you, 240, then 300. See, and after about a minute and 3/4 to 2 minutes, depending on the weather and all these things, it'll be doing 2,000 miles an hour.
Ooh.
Mike won't know that. I mean, he'll be pulled up, and I'll have him in a hammock. I'm gonna be suspending him in a hammock where he's actually standing up. As he looks outside the rocket, the door that we put him in with will be a big piece of Lexan, and it'll be sealed off so that there's no air leaks. So he'll be looking through this huge sheet of Lexan. Then either side of the Lexan door will be two 8x10 computer monitors, and they will be linked to a dozen cameras, and the cameras will be going through sequence so Mike can see everything that's happening above him, on either side of him, and below him, okay? And these rockets will be sequencing, the cameras will be sequencing one after another as the rocket fires. And it'll climb for a couple of minutes, and that will give Mike another somewhere between 27 to 33 miles. And then the engines will cut out, and the thing will coast for a couple of miles. All during this time, Mike will be talking to people. He'll be saying, I see this, I feel that, I know this, if it works right. And I think we got probably an 80% chance if we can build it the way we want to. It's all a question of money, of course. So it'll climb for a couple of minutes, and then it'll coast, and then Mike will hit apogee. Apogee means the highest point you hit in your rocket flight. Okay. Now, in the past, some guys have launched rockets from the ground, sent them to space, sent them to the Kármán line, and essentially what they are is they're really high accelerating rockets. Instead of taking off at a couple of G, they might come off at 100 G. See what I mean? So, bam, they shoot off like a cannon. And what happens is after a couple seconds, the engine burns out, but it doesn't matter because the momentum is there. See, and the air is getting thinner, and then these things climb up to where they are, and then they just tumble out of control. And they try to recover them with parachutes. Usually they come back in pieces, but they do go there that high. The United States also built dozens of different types of sounding rockets in the 50s that were powered by all kinds of propellants. Most of them were hypergolic propellants. A hypergolic is a term that means you don't need to light those fuels. All you do is put them together and they explode, okay? So their rocket engine would just have two valves and whatever it is. The most common one was I think, using unsymmetrical dimethyl with nitrogen tetroxide. You put those two things together, man, you got a powerful rocket.
And those chemicals on their own are a bit dangerous, huh?
Oh yeah, you don't want to get splashed with any of that stuff. I remember boron. They used to do tests. Our Titan II ran UDMH-NTO. That's what you call it. And I remember they were testing an engine. Maybe it was a bigger version of the Titan engine up at the rocket engine test stands up over the town of Boron, out there in the Mojave Desert, out on the edge of Edwards Air Force Base. And they somehow something went south and blew the tank up. And hydrazine makes like this orange kind of liquid. And this liquid turned into a liquid orange cloud, and it was flying over Boron, and the people were evacuating. Oh. People were getting burnt. Little things were happening. People were getting burned. Like when it comes down, it can start a fire real easy because it reacts with damn near anything. A lot of guys will use hydrazine and turpentine, or hydrazine and some of these fuming acids. I mean, hydrazine is really, it goes off with damn near anything. So I don't get sidetracked, but anyway. So this hydrogen peroxide rocket will take it. I just know too much about rocketry. That's one of my problems. So it'll take it up. It'll hit apogee. And when it hits apogee, a parachute that it has at the top of it, it's only 7.5 feet in diameter, and it has a weather balloon underneath it. This weather balloon will inflate and extend this kind of parachute. Just look like a bubble on the top of the spaceship. And what will happen is the rocket will hit apogee, and it'll start to fall. And what happens is this very light balloon and what's left of the RCS system kind of keeps the rocket stable because there's nothing to keep it stable in fall. It can go into a tumble. It can go into a roll. If this stuff doesn't work, Mike's done for. Okay, and there's no way to save him. Okay.
Yeah, a tumble at that speed is just too much.
Absolutely. Okay.
Right.
So if it works, okay, he'll come down. The rocket has a pointed nose on the bottom of it, and so as he re-enters, as the air gets thicker and thicker and thicker, this weather balloon with this parachute. It's a supersonic parachute. It's good for about 2,000 miles an hour in dense air at sea level, okay? It was used on a rocket torpedo that was used by the Navy. So what will happen is this balloon that's at the top of this thing, this rocket, will get all beat up as the air gets thicker and thicker and thicker. And then it'll burst, and this parachute will just be there, and it'll kind of help them slow down. There's also 4 air brakes at the top of the thing. They look like, if you saw the SpaceX launches, when they recover their rockets and they come down and land, they have these air brakes on them at the top of them that flop out. Yeah. Well, they weren't invented by SpaceX. That is a concept that came from the Soviet Union on their N-1 rocket. They used it on their N-1 rocket and a couple of the others. But essentially, we're doing the same thing. It's a good idea. And it'll drag them down into a lower air, somewhere around 20,000 feet, which is still 4 miles up. His first parachute will come out. And then somewhere around 10,000 feet, a second parachute will come out, and then there'll be backups for both of those. And he should land on the nose of the thing, and it's got a crushable nose, and he should be okay. That's the plan, and that's as good as I can figure out. If we were to do a ground launch, okay, like supposedly there's other guys right now that are trying to go to space privately, okay, and they're doing a ground launch, and they'll launch from the ground with a rocket that has a reaction control system, gimbaling of the engines or whatever they're doing, and they will carry the thing all the way up, to 62 miles. That's the idea. But then you got to bring the thing back. So the only thing they can do is do what you do in a capsule, and have the capsule disconnect, and then you have all these parachutes come out, things like that. So that's kind of what we're competing against. I think the Raccoon is a better idea and a cheaper idea by a long shot, because you have more safety factor. See, when you load somebody into a flight rocket that'll be 60 or 70 feet tall, and it's loaded with fuel, it's a bomb. It's worse than what we have by a long shot. And because they're bipropellants, it's really a bomb. So you got one little thing go wrong, Although they do have probably an escape system on there very similar to what they used on Mercury, which is a tower that mounts to the top of the capsule. That only works when you got air. Once you get up past where there's no air, you got to cut it loose. It's not going to help you. It's not for you. So is that kind of clear?
That's good. So there's a bunch of cameras around. So I have some of the images you sent me of that have like the
right.
The brakes. They're not the brakes, but you know what I mean.
Right. We're probably going to use things like GoPro. Huh?
The grid fins, as SpaceX calls them, but the air brakes.
Yes.
So it looks like 4 of those, and then there's it looks like a camera at the end of each of those arms.
Right.
Is that
there is one? Yep. We're trying to get long shots down and far away. You know what I mean? And then there's also a camera arm underneath him pointing up at him, so that people can see him through the. Because one thing we had that was kind of weird was when we fired the steam rockets, people would say, "Oh, he didn't get in there. He was not in there." Yeah, I had a lot of that. People say, "Well, next time put him in there." People. I think people have a hard time grasping that somebody would actually do that. Okay, put themselves in a rocket and launch them. I get it. I get it. The reason why these things are dynamic is because they're dynamic, man. You know what I mean? I mean, when you get yourself into any kind of a rocket, you launch yourself in one of these situations, you are throwing the dice. You are throwing the dice with your life. And people don't, I don't know if they really like to see that. They say they do, but at the same time, they're very critical. People are very critical. I don't understand that. I set up this place where we build these things, El Ranchito Roquete. That's what it's called. And that's German and Spanish for the little rocket ranch, because I'm German and Mexican, so it's kind of like a play off my nationality. And what I did, I built land speed cars there. And when I met Mike, Mike was down and out, not doing very well, had these great dreams. And I love people like that. I love people who have great dreams. I've worked on all kinds of stuff, land speed, motorcycles, cars, powered by rockets, jets, all kinds of piston, and all kinds of stuff. And I love that. To me, people like that are amazing. So Mike just didn't have anybody in his corner, see? He didn't have anybody in his corner. So I said, hey, I got a shop there. There's not much there, but there's welders and there's grinders and cutters and all this stuff. If you want to build this thing there, man, I'll help you we can figure out the ways to refine it so it won't kill you. You know, you have a dumb idea there right now, but if you really, he goes, yeah, I really want to do this. I really want to do this. Well, I want to jump the Snake River Canyon. And so a couple of years later, I gave him some tanks and some valves and all the stuff he needed to make a steam rocket. And over a period of about 2 years, he started developing thrust. And then by about third year, he had all the power he needed. And I think when you go and you set up a ramp and you load yourself into a steam rocket, they'll be, oh, I'm going to go up a mile. They just go, oh, you know, this guy. Yeah, so I would get emails. People would send me emails. He goes, and they would say, you know, next time put him in the rocket. And, you know, I don't know what to tell people like that. I don't tell people like that. You know, so, yeah. So this thing is definitely, you know, I don't know how many years it's going to take. If I can find funding, you know, I need approximately $2.8 million. I need 1.8 for hardware, and I already have the outside shell of the thing built. And I need $1 million for talent. Okay, I'm going to need a great meteorologist. And I know I can get him. I'm going to need somebody who can track it with a radar. I'm going to need somebody who can set up a good GPS system. I'm going to need somebody who can set up this rotating photograph thing with a down feed, a real-time down feed to a base someplace. You know, we'll probably launch them in New Mexico. And that's another thing, too. You got to kiss a lot of ass to get that to happen. You know, you got to beg people to help you out. You got to pay them. Okay, remember, everybody's got their hand out. They don't share.
You got to bribe people in Mexico.
Absolutely. They're not like, hey, you know, well, you saw the Felix Baumgartner thing, okay? You know, Dr. Allen Eustace, Felix Baumgartner, I remember, he jumped out at 128,000 feet from that gondola. See, and it's just a gondola because it's not a rocket. See what I mean? That's much more complex. It's just a capsule. He jumps, he stands up, he falls out of, okay? And then Dr. Allen Eustace wanted to go higher. He's a Google billionaire guy. And basically, he just strapped himself to the bottom of a balloon. And he was belly down, and he climbed up to 135,000 feet. And then he cut himself loose. And they had a type of a ram that came out from his back. It's extended out. You ever seen those little party toys where you flick them and they extend out? When you're a kid, you flick them and they extend out because they're like a roll. They're like a tube rolled. And as you throw them out, their mass pulls them out and they extend. Dr. Allen Eustace had something like that on his back. And what that did was that stabilized him in free fall. He fell from 135,000 feet. I have tried to contact Dr. Eustace because I'm on a brain trust thing. Okay, you know, I'm forever learning. Okay, and I'm going to put a guy in space, but I haven't gotten hear anything back from him. But it would be nice if he could share a little knowledge with me. But the idea is, okay, I'm going to need $2.8 million. I can probably do it cheaper. You know, somebody told me that they spent $26 million on the Red Bull strato jump, they called it, and I don't know if I'm buying that. It's just not there. I don't see it there.
Yeah,
it's kind of like the Bloodhound land speed car. They're building a British land speed car, or they were. And supposedly, you know, I hear all kinds of stories, but the large figure was $85 million. You know, you give me $85 million, I'll give you that 6th generation fighter jet that people are always bragging about. You know, they like to build. I give you that. I'll give you one. I'll roll you out one for $85 million. Because it just isn't there. Most of that stuff just goes in people's pockets and consultant fees. Here's an example. One Jerry Brown, my buddy, Jerry Brown, where's that $1.3 billion you guys were going to put into the high-speed train? You remember that?
Oh, yeah.
$1.3 billion, that's billion with a B, dollars. Where'd that go? They're like, well, we spent that on consulting. It's like, you know, we had to figure out where the tracks are going to go. I'm like, you see where the old tracks
expensive.
are?
Yeah.
That's where the new tracks go. Okay, you know what I mean? That's it. That's that's consulting fees. You know what? That's not. I don't want to point the finger at anybody, but I'm smelling a rat there. Okay, so it's kind of like that. Everything is like that. People don't really want to help you out. They say so, but in the end, they just want you to keep paying them, and keep paying them until they're tired of seeing the money come in. And that's just not the way I work. I will set together a real efficient group of guys. Anybody isn't efficient, he's down the road. And we're going to get paid as it goes along. And I'm going to, I'm making this thing happen. It may take me 18 months to 2 years to raise it. It's all a question of money. I'm doing it. I'm going to build a thing as the money comes in. I'm not, you always get these guys that have projects and they say stuff. Yeah, we're going to do this. We're going to, fly to the moon and scoop some shit back and bring it back. As soon as we get funded, see, you might as well say when Santa Claus comes, because that ain't going to happen either. See, I don't work that way. I build things as the money comes in, and when the money stops coming in or whatever happens, that's as far as we got. But I give it my best shot.
Yeah.
See, and so there is no reason why we can't put Mike in space. There's no reason. This is going to happen. I don't know how soon it will happen, but it's going to happen. Mike wants to do it. He's serious about it. We talk about it. I don't think he grasps 100% of what we're talking about sometimes. He thinks, oh, it's just if I can hit the button on a steam rocket, I can fly this thing to space. So I want to get it to the point where I'm sure, 80% sure that it's going to work. That I'm trying to keep it as simple as possible. Basically, we're just going back to basic physics with a simple rocket and a simple RCS system and a balloon. So I'm keeping it as simple as possible. Once you build like all these other guys are talking about ground rocket, and you're going to go to the Kármán line and it gets very complex, and your safety margins go down quite a bit. So you look at what they spent on Project Mercury. They didn't know how to put a man in space, but they did a lot of test flights before, and they had their capsule protection system. Essentially, it was a rocket mounted on a tower. If you want to go back to Project Mercury photographs, you can look at either their Redstone or their Atlas missiles, and they had this red tower on top of the black capsule. And if shit went south, there were 3 wires that ran down every 120 degrees of that entire rocket. 3 wires, and they were frangible. That means they can break pretty damn easy. And what happened is, if 2 of them lost continuity, they knew the rocket was coming apart, and that started this escape system, and this rocket fired and pulled the capsule away, but it only worked as long as you had air. See, because the air, the drag on the capsule makes the thing fly straight. Without that, man, it's Tumble City. You're not going to survive. So you can see the difference in what we're doing, and why I took the Raccoon route is the safest, smartest way to do this. Launching from the ground is DUMB. Unless you got a lot of money,
it takes more.
Well, I'll give you a perfectly good example, okay? Well, let's look at Virgin Galactic, okay? Now, not that I'm bum-rapping anybody, because I got some buddies that work for Virgin Galactic, and it's a cool place, a cool company. But essentially, so far they got, 1, 2, 3, 4 dead, 4 in a wheelchair. And how many people have they put to space, taken to space? That'd be 0. Passengers. That'd be 0. And there's other weird stuff too. Like I say, space has always been 62.8 miles to me as long as I can remember. And I'm 63 years old. But now some scientists say, no, it's 50 miles. By some weird coincidence, the Virgin Galactic spacecraft, if that's what you want to call it there, space aircraft, that's what I would call it, with 6 people and it can go 53 miles. So it can reach 53 miles. So I don't know what happened there, but I'm smelling the rat there too. So, and it's been 20 years, right, since they won the X Prize. What was that, 97? 90? When did they win the X Prize? Rutan designed the first Spaceship One. Do you remember that? What year was that?
Who was it?
When Rutan Spaceship One won the X Prize? What year was that?
Well, let's look here.
Do you have a computer access there? I want to say 97, something like that.
X Prize.
That's
Ansari X Prize?
Yeah, that's the one.
2004. The prize was won on 2004.
Okay, so that's what it's a little later than I thought. Okay, so 2004.
By the Tier 1 project by Burt Rutan, financed by Paul Allen from Microsoft.
Okay, yeah, and he put the money up for that, right? From what I heard, they spent $30 million to win $10 million. Okay, but Paul Allen, well, yeah, you can say, well, economically that sounds stupid, Waldo. Yeah, but the idea wasn't that. The idea was to inspire people to try stuff. See what I mean? That was the idea. Okay, so you go, okay, say 2004. So it has been 15 years. Okay, since they said, well, we're going to put passengers in space using that same kind of craft and derivatives of that Virgin. It became a company, Virgin Galactic. One of my best friends is one of the four that died. His name was Charles May, but we called him Glenn May. And they were just doing the cold fuel flow test at Mojave, and the tank just blew up, and he died instantly. And it kind of soured me to Virgin. I was like, "Fool, you bastards!" And the reason was because of the BS that followed. They said everybody was trying to figure out, well, what happened? And they said, well, we use nitrous oxide, and we use a rubber. We fire the nitrous oxide through the rubber, light the rubber, and that's the engine, which was bad idea. Okay, in the 50s up to the 70s, you could have got technical reports from NASA that said, hey, this nitrous oxide shit blows up, and we don't know why. It just does it when it feels like it, okay? Everybody thinks they got it figured out now. Would I buy a ticket for that? There's no freaking way. I wouldn't even take a free ticket, forget about it. That's such a dumb idea, okay? So it's nitrous oxide, and there's a couple different derivatives of nitrous oxide, but the one they use blows up when it freaking feels like it. So then they said, this is the part that pissed me off, and I'm just going to go ahead and tell you. They said, well, the reason is because, and I talked to one of their better engineers, who's probably not even with them anymore. But they said, the reason is, Waldo, because we had a composite tank. It had aluminum light, and we had a composite tank. So it was, and we think some of the epoxy reacted with the nitrous oxide. And I said, I'm going to say no to that. Well, you don't work on the program. That's what I was told in my face. So I'm going to say no to that because when it was blowing up for NASA, they didn't have composites back then, baby. They were using aluminum and stainless steel. They didn't have composites. So I'm smelling bullshit here. So that kind of soured me about the whole thing. See, so would I buy a ticket? Hell no. No. And that's them, okay? That's why I'm doing the raccoon thing. I thought about, dropping them from an airplane and doing that kind of stuff, standard kind of airplane because it's so small, one person. I thought about using a ground launch, which is too much propellant, too long under power, too much heat. I can go on and on and on. That's a bad idea. Unless you can really pump money into it, and then you can work the bugs out. You could copy what NASA did, with these short hops, Shepard and Grissom, back in the early 1960s. They go on 61 up until 1962. And they made these suborbital hops where they basically launched and they went in an arc, and I think things peaked out about 115, 120 miles, something like that. And then they landed in the ocean 300 miles away. I don't know if you know, Robert Truax was going to do the same thing. He had a couple of astronauts. The first astronaut he had was Evel Knievel. And he was going to do the same thing, launch him by the edge of the sea. He was going to be the first private astronaut. But then Evel Knievel beat somebody up with a baseball bat, and all the sponsors ran away from him. There was no more money, and that went south. So a couple other guys came through the works, giving Robert Truax money. And the last guy was Phil Peters. And Phil Peters, they tell me he lives in Camarillo now. He was a really cool guy. I met him when I talked to Truax, and I got to know Truax many years ago. I'm talking the 80s. And he was going to sit in this squat in this little capsule on top of this rocket that had 4 LR-101 Vernier rocket engines that ran on kerosene and loxam. That's what they were. And so it had 4,400 pounds of thrust over this rocket. Same thing. It's going to go up to the Kármán line. Same thing we're trying to do, but a ground launch. And then the Navy got interested in the project because Truax's main love was giant rockets. Okay, giant rockets. Truax went to NASA when they were developing the shuttle. I don't know if you know the story about the shuttle, but the shuttle was supposed to be a third of the size it ended up being. And the reason is because NASA is very military. I would say it's mostly military. And they wanted to put up these K-11 spy satellites, and they're big. They are, you see the Hubble? That's a K-11 spy satellite pointed out towards space. Okay, same thing. Just slightly different electronics. You point it toward the Earth, it's a spy satellite. You got that? You with me on that?
Sure.
Okay, so that's what they were. Okay, and maybe I'm giving you too much information here. I'll end up in jail. But anyway, the point was, so they wanted to have these giant satellites to launch, and the original space shuttle was going to have one engine and be much smaller. I have a model. I have an actual NASA model of a low-speed model they were testing in a wind tunnel. It was going to have one engine and be much smaller, a third the size it was. But it wouldn't get funded. The Air Force would not help fund it unless they made it big enough to carry a KH-11. So it got bigger and everything changed, and that's how that happened. That's how that got bigger to the point where it was just a nuisance. So Truex, Robert Truex was like, I'd say twice to three times smarter than the average human being. He makes me look like a low-grade mental patient. Okay, this guy was a genius. Okay, and he was, and I knew him really well. He was a genius. And so he's like, no, Waldo, what we got to do is you got to build these giant rockets. I said, like the Saturn V, that put men in. No, dwarf the Saturn V. Saturn V is nothing. He goes, we build them the size of a battleship. We build them in a shipyard. Okay, we float them out to sea. You heard about this?
No.
Oh, okay.
This
It was
cool.
called the Sea Dragon. Okay, I actually have some of the
I've
blueprints.
heard of the
from
Sea
it.
Dragon. Yes.
You've heard of that, right? Okay. Now you're talking something that's somewhere between. I've heard all kinds of different stories, but some of the designs went from 400 feet long to almost 900 feet long. So they're the size of a battle cruiser. Okay.
Yeah, and it
build
would,
it in a shipyard.
Float horizontally, and then you'd set it vertical.
Yeah, once you put fuel
to
in
launch
it
it out of
levels
the water.
itself in the water, right? The thing was it had one big pressure-fed engine. The thing was mostly made of a type of metal that was kind of exotic called margin steel, which is pretty amazing stuff. And there was LOX kerosene. The main engine, the first engine, made 80 million pounds of thrust, or it made the power of 10 Saturn V's. Okay, and think about this: if they would have built this thing, and then they had it all figured out and stuff, and the Navy approached just before they were going to launch Peters, the Navy approached Truex, and Truex bid on that like a tuna on a line, man. He always wanted to do that, and so the space thing kind of fell apart, and Phil Peters got kind of shoved aside. I'm sure he's still a little bitter about that, but so they were going to build these gigantic rockets and build them in a shipyard, float them out to sea, and then fill them with propellant. They would right themselves in water, and boom, 2 of those launches would put the ISS in orbit. 2 of those launches, just 2.
Wow.
So, and they're way out in the ocean, so they don't, screw with anything. They're really environmentally well done. So it was the future. It was actually the past, but it was the future. But it was what he wanted to do. And so there was a guy before Mike that was going to attempt this. That was Phil Peters, and that's the story. Is there anything that I can make clearer for you?
Oh no, that's pretty cool.
That's the way it is. So we're going to put him in space. We're going to put Mad Mike Hughes. I'm going to get either if he bows out of it, or we don't get enough money, it'll just take longer. But I thought, no, I got plenty of time. I mean, how long's Virgin Galactic been at it now?
15 it's been
years.
A while.
Yeah. Yeah, and you know what? This is really weird. One time I saw an article that came out in the New York Times, and Virgin Galactic got $1 billion from a Saudi sheik. Well, I think it was Saudi. $1 billion. No, United Arab Emirates guys. Emirates guys. I don't know really much about the Arab nations. I don't know. It's different countries. I don't know. But it said he was a really cool guy. He put the money up for $1 billion, and so here we are, $1 billion later. And how many people have they put into space? That would be 0. See? So I'm going to call bullshit on that, okay? Just because that's the way I am. So I don't know.
Everything takes longer.
Yeah. yeah. Sometimes too long, And another thing, too, is, the youth of today, they have a different view on stuff. When I was a kid, man, everybody wanted motorcycles and hot rods and, pretty girls. And saying, these guys aren't like this anymore. They're like, I'm going to put a guy, I ran into a guy the other day, I'm going to put a guy, oh, that's nice. Put him in space, so that's cool. Like I said, I'm going to go play around the golf, you know what I mean? So it's a different world, too. So I think it's going to be harder for us to find the money, But I think we're just going to keep at it. Mike's got a deal going in Japan. He's got a deal going in France. We got the TV show coming up here, and I don't know when that's going to air, but sometime this year you're going to see Homemade Astronauts on the Science Channel.
That's cool.
And in another month we're going to launch him in his 6th steam rocket. We're going to launch him. And he wants to keep doing these launches, and I'm against that every time it comes up. Because every time you get into the yeah. Because they bring a lot of attention. He wants to give the impression, and he is. He's trying to go higher and stuff. But I'm like, dude, every time you get in one of these, something's going to take you to space. Every time you get in one of these, man, you might as well just take the dice and throw them down on the table. If they come up snake eyes, you're dead. These things are dangerous, dangerous, dangerous. Why do you think when Evel Knievel did that, he was saying prayers? Evel Knievel was not the kind of guy to be saying prayers at first. Later on in life he was. but because he wasn't sure, he's going to, 5 minutes from now, you may not be here. So,
wow.
These things are very dangerous, man. To give you an idea how powerful steam is, okay? If just for yucks, you can use this as a reference, okay? There was an engine, a steam engine. You remember steam trains? They were big in the 40s. Well, they built one called the Union Pacific Big Boy, okay? Now, imagine what this train looks like. Just the engine part of it. It's like 117 feet long, something like that. It's 17 feet high. It weighs 1 million pounds by itself without the train part, okay? Without the cars and everything, okay? It could pull by itself a train that is 5 miles long. It could pull a 5-mile long train nearly 100 miles an hour by itself, okay? It could pull that train up the Wasatch Mountains and did for almost 10 years. These Union Pacific Big Boys, they're just badass, man. They're just unreal. They're on the scale of getting unreal. Like when we're talking about the Sea Dragon tracks, we're getting on an unreal scale. Okay, well, here's the thing. The chamber where the pistons go that push the wheels to pull this train is almost the exact same size as the chamber we've got in Mike's steam rocket. Yeah, does that make a good analysis for you? You get the idea of the power we're talking here? Oh, yeah. Yeah, steam rockets are mighty, mighty, mighty. And that was a steam
I have a
rocket
picture
dragster.
of that steam engine you're talking about, and
that's mighty, right?
That's giant. It just keeps going.
It's huge, man. It's huge. Yeah, it's huge. They built the steam-powered Truex, actually built the steam-powered rocket dragster in the late '60s. He called it the Neptune, okay, because water, and he's a Navy guy and all this. That rocket car never ran flat out, okay? But because every time it came off of power, it crashed. It crashed because it had weird balance things, and like I told you, Truex wasn't the greatest, I thought, with aerodynamics. He's great, but he wasn't the greatest with aerodynamics. And this thing essentially tumbled out of control once it came off power, okay? Running between a quarter and a third power. It was going 60 miles an hour faster than any of the dragsters of its time. It was crashing at 260 something miles an hour. The nitro fuel dragsters at that time were doing 190 to 202, 205 miles an hour. This thing basically just dusted all that stuff and was only running on a quarter to a third power. See, they envisioned 500 mile an hour quarter miles. If you can imagine that, these guys would have to wear a G suit. They have to go drag racing in a G suit. Yeah. You're talking, a 500 mile an hour quarters. You're talking 6-7 G's constant. Not just an impact, constant. So these guys are accelerating, just in a phenomenal way. And then you can look that up. There's pictures of everything I tell you. There's pictures. The cool thing about the internet now is that all these guys are dying and getting old, and they're all putting their pictures on the internet of their machines, and it just blows your mind. There's nothing else. Just I'm setting up a little museum here at El Ranchito Roquete called Daredevils in Speed. In it, there's a bunch of shipping containers, and I'm getting all arranged as we speak. And one of them is on land speed, one of them is on water speed, one of them is on air speed, and one of them is on Daredevils. And when you talk about these kind of machines, they just capture your imagination. I'm hoping to do that with this. And the whole reason why we're going to send Mike in space isn't so much to see if the world is flat around. It might be for him because, people say, he's not a real flat earther. This guy is a real flat earther. And he's gotten worse and worse and worse. It used to be, this was kind of a joke. I alluded to this to you before. It was a joke that my friend Garen came up with. The Bureau of Land Management would not let us launch that rocket horizontally. We're going to launch off a 52-degree ramp and see how the distance the steam rocket would go a year and a half ago. And the BLM was like, no, you're not going to do that. You'll end up landing on our land, and if you hit a tortoise, we're going to fine you $50,000. If you guys land on our land, we're going to haul you away in handcuffs, blah, 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 blah. So we go to Needles, and we talk to all the big hot dogs there. Hey, we want to do this. Like, well, you pay us $535 an hour, and in 18 months, we'll come to the conclusion if that thing landing on a parachute is going to damage the desert. I was like, nah, you guys are out of the loop here. So we're driving home and we're all bummed out. I'm talking to Garen. I got this buddy named Garen France, and he's just a brilliant guy. He's an idea guy. And he goes, hey, Waldo, Mike's a flat earther, man. Just launch him vertically, and you can tell everybody that he wants to see if the earth is flat around or not. And we laughed, it was just a big joke. And then I thought, yeah, Mike, we could do a vertical launch, So we didn't really say that. So once we got back there a few months later, we set the rocket up vertically and this and that. We're sitting around with a bunch of people one evening. We're all exhausted, man. We totally busted hump on putting that rocket up. It takes days of hard work in 100-degree weather to put this stupid thing up to get it to launch, okay? I'm sitting around with a bunch of people. I don't know who they are. And I said, and Mike goes, yeah, man. He goes, we're going to launch this rocket to see if the Earth is flat around or not. You see, it's sponsored by Flat Earth, Research Flat Earth. And we're all laughing. Everybody's laughing, One guy wasn't laughing. One guy was with some sort of a news guy, got on AP, Associated Press, went around the world. And so, Mike just said, hey, Waldo, he goes, I really do think the world is flat. And he goes, I'm going to try to find out if it is or not. I said, Mike, man, you got orbital mechanics. Things are up in space. You got, I can argue with you for days on this. He goes, well, I don't know. He goes, he said 400 years ago during the Spanish Inquisition, they'd kill you if you didn't believe the Earth was flat. Yeah, I know. It's kind of like, so the joke we had was, if you get it, there's a tilting point. I have always believed we create reality. So there's a tipping point. You get enough people believing the Earth is flat, you better watch where you're sailing, buddy. You might go off the edge. So that joke evolved into this thing, and now here I am, a year later, figuring out how I'm going to put a guy in space. I got it figured out. Yeah. I got it. And it's just a question of the money. And you look up my history, just look up my name, Waldo Stakes, and it's spelled Stakes, like a stake you drive into the ground. You'll see that I am the absolute real deal. I can plumb up a bipropellant liquid rocket, which nobody but a big company or NASA can do. They just can't. But I can make them rock and roll. I can make them run. I'm going to put Mike in space unless he gets tired of it or we can't raise the bread at all. And I'm hoping to use your program, your podcast to do that.
Absolutely, yeah. I have.
You down?
I'll be sure to include the link to Mike's website where the people can donate if they want. So,
right.
I have a picture of you in front of a rocket of some sort.
What color shirt am I wearing?
Black shirt. You're showing off your guns. It's that one that's got the three or four round tanks at the top of it and the single nozzle at the bottom.
Oh, okay. See, I don't know. Could be. I don't know. Here, I'll just tell you what I've done. Okay, I'm building a car that can go 2,000 miles an hour. Okay, that could be it. It's powered by the engine from the X-15 rocket plane.
Yep, that's the one. Yep.
Okay, yeah. It's called Sonic Wind LSRV. Okay, I was building one bigger than that. That was powered by an LR-105, which there was a sustainer engine from the Atlas, and it was like 60-something feet long. This one, the LSRV, is 57 feet long. And LSRV is an acronym. It stands for Land Speed Research Vehicle. Here's what I wanted to do with this. I wanted to build this car, a super-duper car. That's all I can tell you. It makes all supercars look like nothing. Dragsters, everything is just junk next to this thing, okay? It has a Thiokol XLR 99 engine in it with modern technology added to it. I basically cut off the combustion chamber nozzle and built a new one out of carbon fiber because we have that ability now because we have that technology, okay? So that engine can make 1 million horsepower. Yeah, it sounds surreal, but it's true. I'm trying to build my Union Pacific big boy of the 21st century, okay? So essentially I'm building a car that can, in theory, with the propellant it has on it, burn out somewhere around 2,000 miles an hour. The land speed record right now is 763 miles an hour. 763 miles an hour. And the only place you can run this car, you can do a short spurt at Bonneville. Okay, Bonneville salt flats out there in Utah. Or you can take it to Salar de Uyuni in Bolivia. And that's at 14,000 foot altitude. It's in the mountains, but the salt lake there is about 4 times bigger than the Bonneville salt flat. And you can wick it all the way up to 2,000 miles an hour. It accelerates at 100 miles an hour a second. If you can imagine that, it's going 100, 200, 300, 400 for 22 seconds. That's what it has enough propellant for.
Wow.
You couldn't run it as a dragster because if I took all the fuel weight out of it, and it just had enough fuel to go a quarter mile, if you hit the rocket engine, you'd be dead at the quarter mile. Your body will have
been pulped, just like I threw you out of a 20-story building. You'd be pulped. You couldn't, if you can imagine, it's a car you can't drag race because it's too powerful to drag race. So here's what I was doing with it, okay?
You have to
right?
You have to accelerate slower, right?
Yeah, you're like, Waldo, you're lying to me. I am not. I am not at all. So this car, okay, I was going to beat the land speed record, 763, okay? And then I was going to, I didn't care about holding the record or anything. I'm just going to beat it. I'm going to hammer it. I'm going to do like 1,000. And then I'm going to put the thing in this museum, and it's going to wait until somebody else, France, Germany, England likes to go after land speed record, Australia, New Zealand, they all were building cars, takes the record. Takes the land speed record, and then some guy, who knows who this guy is? I'll probably be dead. I'm 63 years old. I'll probably be dead when this happens. And this guy will come and take the car, insure it, in order to replace it in case something goes wrong, and he'll just bring your record back to the United States because, okay, this is the greatest damn country there ever was, there may ever will be. Okay, this is it. The United States of America. I sound like a fool saying it, but I'll tell you this anyway. That's how I feel about it. God bless America. This is a country where you can do stuff like this. You see what I mean? Go try to get a rocket engine and go build yourself a land speed car in the Soviet Union or Russia, comrade. You know what I mean? Go try that. You know what I mean? Go build yourself one in Mexico. Ain't going to happen. This is the country where shit happens. This is it. You're here. You're listening to this podcast. You are lucky to be here. You thank your stars. You're here. The only person holding you back from doing amazing shit is you. Okay, so slap yourself, put the video game down, get off your butt, and go do cool shit, okay? So I'm leaving you this legacy that if you got the stones and you want to go faster than any man's ever gone, you can borrow it from me. How much am I going to charge you? Zippo. You see, nothing, okay? You just have to insure it and have a practical team and stuff. I'm leaving in charge of this museum that I'm creating, okay? So that's the car. I also have an ice racer that I built. It's a black thing. It's called just a sonic wind ice racer. That can do 1,000 miles an hour. It's been built, it's been tested. It's just sitting in a container here, okay? Because I got sidetracked with all this other stuff. And so I'm going to, before I die, I leave this planet, I'm going to have that car and that ice racer, and they will be on loan. Anybody has the stones to ride them, and it will cost you nothing. You just got to insure it and make sure you're not going to break it. Try not to kill yourself. And you got to be competent. And they do have a group of people decide if you're competent. You can't just say Coop can go help himself to this. But this is how it's going to be set up, okay? And then we're going to have the history of Mike. Mike is probably going to do a few more jumps before we launch him in space. He built a rocket-powered boat just recently. And that can do somewhere between 350 and 400 miles an hour. And I can't tell you why for sure. I know it will work, but we're launching it in a different way. And he's going to do that sometime next year or so. We talked about building 2 flight rockets and having a race between Mike and a couple other these Daredevils. A couple guys I like. There was one guy I really liked back in the 70s, and basically he's in a wheelchair now. He had a bad landing, but he's a competent guy and stuff, and you don't have to ride a motorcycle to ride one of these. And I think when Mike does this, I'm going to approach him, see if he wants to ride the other rocket. So we got all these projects. We got a half a dozen projects, and they're real, and they're as hardcore as you get. And you'll be seeing more of them come when this TV show comes out. But I can't give you all the information because those production companies treat you like a mushroom. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
you can't say everything. Yeah.
Well, they just don't want to. They want. It's about them making money, not about you making money. So that's okay. These things are happening. I do these things. El Ranchito Roquete exists for one reason. If you're a guy and you want to do something amazing, I don't know what you got an idea for. I've had guys approach me. They're going to build gyroscopically balanced motorcycles, rocket bikes, all kinds of stuff. And I'm like, hey, there's a guy got a boat there. He wants to put a rocket on the boat. There's hydroplanes, so they're kind of high. I'm like, cool. I have some parts. I know where you can get the rest of the stuff. I will help you do that. I'll charge you nothing. But I want this country to realize they are in the United States of America. And you can do anything. If you can dream it here, you can do it. And the only person that's stopping you is you. All you got to do is shift your mindset. I'm going to go for this thing, whatever it is. See, but the country has changed quite a bit. And the main goal that Mike is doing this thing is to influence people to, first thing is, all these things that he does, the seminars he has and stuff, he wants everybody to question everything, okay? Because you're going to find out if you don't keep the government in control, they're going to have you, asking permission to fart in public. It's going to get that stupid, you know what I mean? Because you'll be polluting the atmosphere, all this goofy stuff they make up forever. Every time you turn around, some goofy congressman or senator who does nothing for you is figuring out some way to get something on the back end of some goofy law. You see what I mean? If you look them up, you look up any law, pick anything, you'll find out that all this stuff was set up for these cats to make money. They don't give a crap about you. They don't give a crap about this country. They don't believe in this country. They say they do. They lie. But the people got to believe in this country. They got to take control back. You got to question everything, okay? Question everything. So if something doesn't smell right to you, get into it and put an end to it, okay? You question everything and have some balls. Have some freaking balls in life. Have some gut. Mike seems like the sweetest, nicest little guy. He must have stones like an elephant, man, to ride those goofy rockets. He hasn't done it once. He's about to do it the third time. See what I mean?
Yeah.
And these things are not pleasant, okay? Now, they're going to jack you up somehow. You ain't walking away from there without gimping a little bit. You're going to be in pain. If everything works, you're going to be in pain. So this is what I'm saying. Have some balls. Question everything. That's all me and Mike want from everybody. We're old. We're getting older. And we want to leave that legacy for these guys.
We need the next generation. Right?
Right. Absolutely, man.
Yeah.
Because here's the thing, if you don't sustain that, if you don't sustain guys being courageous, and not just, talking about really being courageous, this country will fall apart. It'll totally fall apart. And it is the coolest thing that's ever been going. The country, the concepts for the government are fantastic. It's too bad we got too many corrupt people in there, I'm hoping that Trump can do what he says and help drain the swamp. I sent him a paper I did. To establish a PIA. See, it's the weirdest thing about the government, okay? You got all these congressmen and senators passing laws they just pull out of their ass, okay, for themselves and their buddies to make some money and stuff like this, okay? So you got all the police and all the three-letter agencies and everything like that watching you. What the hell are you doing? You see what I mean? You're not doing nothing. You're just an idiot, just dealing with it. Okay, who's watching them? So I sent Trump a 20-page report on how I thought he should establish a PIA, which stands for Political Investigative Agency. You go to all the three-letter agencies and you go, hey, man, who's the guy who's gung-ho here? Who's the guy who just makes you nuts because he's putting in the extra hours? And, that's Jerry over there. Jerry, you got a job, okay? And you get about 100 of these guys, 100 of these people, guys, girls, whatever, that are just go-getters in these three-letter agencies, CIA, FBI, NSA. If they really love this country, fucking prove it. Okay, and then what happens is this is how you turn loose like wild animals on all these congressmen, senators, governors, all the way down to freaking dog catcher. Okay, anybody's holding a political office they're getting paid for, they are free game. Now, here's what motivates them. This is the difference between anything in the past. Okay, if you catch one of these congressmen or senators up to no good, gnarly shit, and you can prove it, and you bust them and you convict them, we take away everything they have because they stole it from you anyway. Okay, take away everything they have. You leave them just enough to live under a bridge, like they're helping with my security right now. Just enough to live under a bridge, okay? And you take everything they got, you divide it by two. Half of it goes into national kitty because they stole it from us anyway. The other half goes to that agent who convicted them. So the motivation is these smart guys, they're not going to spend their life making $80,000 a year. They will be multimillionaires. And then they can hire guys like sheriffs used to hire deputies and keep this thing going. They might have 10 guys that work for them. They might have an agency, but they are under the auspices of the Political Investigative Agency. And this country will turn around in a year. It'll turn around in a year. And the Congress and the senators and all these people and the governors and stuff, these shady dudes, the ones that are shady, they'll be afraid to stick their head up above water because these PIA guys will cut it off. And they'll be living under a bridge. So no more hot girlfriends. No more best wine in the world. No more Dom Perignon. Your party's over, buddy. See what I mean? And these guys will see to it because they're going to spend your shit in Mexico partying with their girlfriend, right? Because they took your stuff. They get half of your stuff. So you got to have motivation to make people rock. You cannot just tell them, okay, here's your job. You're making $80,000 a year. Here's what you. I know, like Homeland Security guys and stuff, and they try hard, man. They want this country to be great, but it's so freaking corrupt. If you're going to drain the swamp, you need a big pump. See? Big pump. So I gave that to Trump. I never heard back from him.
He didn't call you back?
He did not. Okay, now you can spread that with your podcast. Okay, a PIA.
Right.
It'll change the country. And then the next thing too is I showed him how to build the wall. I didn't want the wall to be a permanent thing. I didn't want Mexico being mad at us. I talked to a 4-star general one time, and I said, why did we pump so much money into Mexico and stuff? He goes, well, in Mexico and Canada, he said, are places if the world goes south, there's going to be a battleground for people get to hear. And I thought, is that how you look at it? He goes, the only way you can. You got the Pacific Ocean on one side, the Atlantic Ocean on the other. You got Canada that it'll defend itself, and you will help it defend itself from people coming from the north. You got Mexico. You got to keep these guys happy. That's what a 4-star general told me. I'm not going to give you his name, my buddy, coming down on him, but he was right, 100%. You got to keep those people. So, I was thinking, well, you build the wall out of shipping containers, three stacked 3 high, and staggered so that they're basically each one is 6 inches more toward Mexico. Makes a wall you can't get over. Okay, and you can cable them together. You can go over floodplains. All this stuff you can do with. You can ride electric go-karts on top. You can solar power them. When you're using people's private land, you can say, well, okay, these 75 containers here, you can use these ones yourself any way you want. Just can't move them. Okay. And so then when things get better with Mexico, and Mexico finally gets a little more economically apt, okay, they take the containers down. If you build a wall now for $8 billion, it's going to cost you $20 billion to take it down. See? No, man, that's not the way to do it. I sent him a paper on that. It was 10-page paper on that. So I'm trying to make the country great, man. I really am. I want it to be for my children and my grandchildren and their children. You see what I mean? That's what we do. Yeah, that's it. So we're teaching you to have some stones, have some ideas, protect your country, love your country. If I'm going in the wrong direction, then sue me then, and I am. So, do you have any other questions? Are we good?
Oh,
what do you need? What else you need to know?
That's I love these stories. It's the old the X-15 rocket. That's what I got on the screen right now with your rocket car, and very cool stuff.
Yeah.
I hope to see. It's good to know. Like, here's the deal. I have a 1972 Guinness Book of World Records. When I was a kid, I'd look at this, and it had what was the land speed record in 72. There was a couple, one rocket, one with internal combustion engine, and I just look through that and be like, oh, this is so cool, and just hearing these stories is so much fun.
I'm the absolute geek in that stuff. I was curator for a couple of museums. In 1972, the record would have been officially held by Gary Gabelich in the Blue Flame at 622 miles an hour. They actually left the measured kilo, at 638 miles an hour, so that you can actually say that's their record. But you'll have it in Guinness at 622, and that record lasted until
twice, right?
Huh?
They have to do it twice. Was that the rule back then?
Yeah, well, no, you had to go 2 ways across a mile. Two ways across a mile. You had to go one way and turn around and come back within an hour. And then the only car that at that time was the Blue Flame. They built a lot of other cars. One that was ready a few years after that was the Budweiser rocket car. It was the first car to go supersonic. You don't even hear about it. It went supersonic with a man on board. It just barely went supersonic. But still, man, you're talking breaking the freaking sound barrier on the ground. That's just the shits, man. That's just it.
That's so much.
And it was done by Stanley Barrett in 1979. And so again, the Brits always hold the land speed record because they like to do everything officially. At that time in 1970, the wheel-driven record had been held by the Summers brothers. Now, I didn't know Gary Gabelich from the Blue Flame, but I did know Pete Farnsworth. In fact, he's kind of a friend of mine. And then the wheel-driven record would be held by the Goldenrod. That was the Summers brothers. They went 409 miles an hour in 1960. I think that would be 1970. Same year. They went right after the Goldenrod. The Blue Flame. They were there with them. So that set the wheel-driven record. Now it's the wheel-driven record's 502 miles an hour, 504 miles an hour, I think. And that's wheel-driven, man. That's unbelievable. And right? It's wheel-driven. That car has one big gas turbine in it, like Homing T55. And then they have also, the wheel-driven ones with the pistons, and they're right there. They're 460s, they're 450s, they're 440s. They're right there. So that's amazing. I mean, I used to love Bonneville. I would go there. And I don't drink. I don't smoke. I don't do drugs. I never took any of that stuff up. I basically just had these things dominate my life, these programs. And I did everything.
That's all you need.
Yeah, maybe it's a good way to live. Maybe it's a dumb way. I don't know. I've been happy.
Awesome,
yeah. So that was the deal, man. The deal is put Mike in space, influence people, do it the safest way I can figure out and the cheapest way I can figure out. That's what I think I have that dialed. And we just try to raise the money and make it happen. I mean, we're not the kind of guys that say we're going to do something and don't. We all have a long history. I have worked on projects, and I've set 36 land speed records, all different kinds of classes, all different kinds of machines, all different kinds of stuff. And I helped Mike with his rockets, and Mike has done all kinds of stuff. So, Mike was a lot of people know he was a flat tracker. He probably told you that. If you remember, he probably told you that. He also was, basically I call it that, but I think they got a name for it. Essentially, he run around in a circle with these engines that are wide open. They don't have any brakes on the things, and it's crazy. But he was local champions many times, and then he was a champion ice racer at one time. The guy jumped. When you say, well, what have you done? And well, I held the record for the Guinness World Record for the longest limousine jump. And this is Mike. So I go,
yes.
How did you prepare this limousine? He goes, I had my helmet on, and I'm like, I'm thinking, you got a roll cage in the car. You got, no, man, that's all he did. He wore a helmet and he just went, in a stock seat. And I would have totally jacked that car up, totally made it look different, to make it work better. But he didn't. And he held the record once. I think he exceeded the record twice, but that guy jumped 7 limos. See, he's broken his back 1, 2, 3, about 4 or 5 times, which then means in another 10 or 20 years, he'll be in a wheelchair. He doesn't care. He doesn't care. He's got this sweet little hillbilly kind of disposition, and he talks like a little hillbilly guy. But, man, he'll hit that hot button. It doesn't scare him a bit. Not a bit.
Yeah.
Do you remember the Green Monster land speed cars? Do you remember that term, Green Monster?
It sounds familiar.
Okay. Well, during the 1960s, up until through the mid-70s, this guy by the name of Art Arfons out of Akron, Ohio. Remember that? Sound more familiar, right?
Yeah.
Yes. He set the land speed record 3 times, okay? Now, check this out. When and I knew him, and I helped him with a couple little things. Not in a big way. This guy didn't need my help at all, okay? He crashed. And when he was crashed through the mile, the car was tumbling through. This is powered by the engine from an F-104 Starfighter, this car. It just was like he took an F-104 Starfighter engine, took like a truck chassis. I think he used a Packard rear end and no, this is how they did shit back then. You can laugh.
Crazy.
I mean, it sounds funny. Man, insane, okay? He put a cockpit on either side of it, and the thing has, so a Starfighter, it has a J79 in it. You can get a J79 that'll do 15,000 pounds of thrust, and you can whip them up to 17,900 pounds of thrust. If you can imagine what that is, it's like 37,000 horsepower. Okay, 37,000 horsepower. Okay, this guy was going through the mile and crashed. When he entered the mile, he was doing 585 miles an hour. He left the mile, he was doing 610 miles an hour. The guy crashed, and he lived. He walked away from the thing. You can't even imagine that. You know what I mean? You're like, what the hell? There was a helicopter hovering over him, filming him, and one of the wheels, they believe, came up and passed through the blades of the helicopter. It was going so freaking fast, okay, if you can imagine that. It was only a couple hundred feet off the car, and they think one of the right front wheel went right through the helicopter blades. Is that true? I don't know. That's a damn good story when you look at it. So, I hook up with the guy, he's like my superhero, man. I am not worthy, I am not worthy kind of thing going on with the guy. And so he calls me up. He goes, well, I'm going to run a jet-powered motorcycle. Would you want to come see it? I'm like, yeah, I'll meet you at Pontiac. So I meet him up there. I got a buddy with me. And it's a J85 powered motorcycle. It can do 600 and he figure about 650 or so. So it's hard because it's a motorcycle. It's got to stand up on 2 wheels. So I had a buddy with me, and the only way I could film him, because we rented a car and the back window wouldn't go down very far, is if I laid on the hood and held on to, you remember those big VHS cameras, how big they were? You know, they were huge.
So your whole shoulder. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. They sat on your shoulder. And I wanted to get this film because Sting was acting weird. Okay, I wasn't sure why. I figured it out, and we talked about it, and he did make changes. And in the end, it didn't work. But so he takes off with his jet-powered motorcycle, and we're chasing him down the slope, and I'm laying on the roof of this car. Okay, I got one arm in one of the windows, so the other one holding on to the video camera, and I'm trying to. Well, my buddy just goes, well, we'll just try to stick with him. So he got the car doing 120 miles an hour, okay? And I'm hanging on the roof of this car. And when the car stopped, I was like, oh, man, I'm on the video. Oh, you know what? That's on YouTube. You can see it. Yeah, you can see it. I look for Art Arpon's jet bike on YouTube. And I'm shooting it from the roof of the car. And I get off the car and I go, man, that was interesting. Literally, I mean, half my clothes were blown off, man. I mean, the camera, luckily I had it on this thing, you know. I mean, I had it on, I had the camera, so I kept the bike in the, it looks like a needle. The bike looks like a green and red needle. It's incredible looking. And in the end, the next year, the following year, maybe 2 years later, came back with he did a bunch of modifications. Again, we're there. And the bike stood up on its tail at 350 miles an hour and crashed. And it crashed for like a mile, okay? Oof. Well, we're the first guys there, okay, because we're chasing him, okay? I get there. He's sitting on the side of this bike. It looks like a dead whale laying on the salt flats. It's green and red. It left green and red stripes for miles. I'm not shitting you. I mean miles. He's sitting on this thing, and he's combing his hair. This guy was 63 or 60. He was my age at the time. He's 63, 64 years old. I go, are you okay? He goes, yeah, I'm okay, Waldo. I go, why are you combing your hair? He goes, cameras are going to be here any minute. That's all he said. The cameras are going to be here. This guy,
That's
man,
what he's worried about.
These guys were fucking amazing. They were amazing. And this is we can't get away from that. You understand what I'm saying? We can't. We gotta be a courageous nation like that, man, or the whole world will run. You know, I'm 63, I'll be 64 here coming up. I work out every day, okay? And people go, well, why is this guy, working out or whatever? It's because you got to stay tough. The world will eat you. It will eat you. People will disrespect you. People, we're kind of like animals. We're civilized animals. That's why people, you have your internet trolls. I had a guy, your internet trolls want to put you down or stuff. I had a guy. He had something on Facebook about Social Security. So I said, so if you have any questions about Social Security, I'm here to answer them, this and that, okay? So I said, yeah, my question is, how is it that I work and you guys take a cut out of my check for 50-something years? One of the jobs I had, I made $75,000 last year, which is a good year for me, okay? Much better year than I had. Definitely now. I said, somehow you feel you can pay me $1,390 a month. That's my Social Security, which means I can almost live under a bridge, okay? So that was my question to this guy. So this guy goes, right away, he texts me back and he goes, hey, asshole. He calls me an asshole, okay? Blah, 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 this and that. You don't like it, you can blah, blah, blah. I was like, I texted him back. And I said, listen, dude, if you were standing in front of me, you wouldn't be calling me an asshole right now. I guarantee you wouldn't, okay? And that was all I kind of had to say to him, because I stay tough. You got to stay tough. You got to stay hard. I don't care how old you are. I don't care what you are. You got to stay tough so the world doesn't jump on you like that. People are idiots. You got to be tough. So anyway, that's a little story there. $1,390 a month, man. On the average, I was making somewhere between $45,000-$50,000 a year for 15 years. So I thought, how did I end up with $1,300 a month? So here's another thing. I'm in a grocery store. And I run into this lady, and we're talking about Social Security, and we're kind of complaining about Social Security. I said, yeah. I said, if I wasn't married to a court reporter, a wife, I'd be living under a bridge right now. She goes, well, how much do you make? I said, I make $1,390. She goes, that's what I make. So I said, what did you do for a living? So I'm thinking, I don't know what, maybe it's a paralegal or something. She was an attorney. She goes, no, I worked in a factory. I said, what kind of money did you make? She said, $27,000, $30,000 a year. I said, so you did that for how long? She goes, 30 years. And I said, and they pay you $1,390 a month? That's what they pay me. And really, I was a general contractor. I thought, oh, man, it's just another government goofy thing that they just make it up as they go along. Well, you going to allow that? I'm already old already. You know what I mean? The kids of the future, they're going to allow that? It's up to them. Got to change this world, man. Make this country better. Don't let people slide on nothing. Because they will. They will. They'll tear your country apart. They'll ruin your life. They don't care. It's all about them. Think of these guys that are like famous political guys. Like think of this Anthony Weiner guy. You remember that guy?
Oh, I remember that guy. Yeah, he was a piece of
right. Yeah, I don't want to say it because it's a family program, right? But I mean, the guy's no good. You do something like that. See what I mean? To do stuff like that and not be ashamed of himself. This guy's a moron, man. He's a moron. He needs to be put in an insane asylum. So you got and like these people are like, oh yeah, this guy ought to run for president. Like what? What? It just the older I get, I don't know if it's because I'm getting older and I'm getting more cynical, but man, like the whole world is just coming apart. I'll tell you one last really cool story. Okay, you might want to have. 30 years ago, I ran a Patriot group. Okay, I met a guy named J.O. Humphreys. Okay, remember that name, J.O. Humphreys. We called him. His name was James Otis Humphreys. Okay, but we called him Joe. Okay, Joe was an old man when I met him. He already was in his 70s, 80s. He will die a couple of years after I met him. Okay, Joe was a B-24 Liberator pilot during World War II. Okay, so they would come out from England, they'd go across, bomb stuff in France and Germany, and they'd fly back across the English Channel. And if they had leftover ammunition, the B-24s would swoop down on any, German tankers or German freighters and, put a couple rounds in them, empty their guns in these things, right? And then they'd fly back to the base, right? James said, Waldo, we could do that except for freighters and tankers that flew a red flag above the swastika. Okay, we couldn't shoot at those ships. I was like, why? He goes, I don't know. So then James gets shot down over Germany. Okay, he goes to. If you're an older guy like me, you've heard of a book and a movie and a stage play called Stalag 17. And then Stalag 17 became a movie, a black and white movie. Later on, it will become another famous movie called The Great Escape. In it, all these guys escape from a German prison camp. Now, this is where I'm going with this, okay? It's real simple. It's not about that. I just want to tell you this guy was real. This James Otis Humphreys was a real guy and you couldn't pay him back for the shit he gave you, okay? I get teary-eyed when I think about this guy. So he said, well, listen, we couldn't shoot these. He goes, while I was in this Stalag, and it wasn't 17, they made it up. It was something else. It had this long name to it. They simplified it because, people are dumb in America. And he said, Australian bomber pilot said, you guys, you Americans, you're the reason why this war is going on and on and on and on. And he's like, what do you mean? He goes, how we can't shoot any of these tankers? Why? Because America is sending fuel to the Luftwaffe. They got in a fight, of course. They got in a knockdown drag. It was a lie. You're a liar. But no. It's happening, okay? So now, years later, after Joe tells me this, like 10 years later, I find out that Prescott Bush, George Jr.'s granddaddy, George Sr.'s daddy, was indicted during World War II for selling fuel oil. He had this oil company, gasoline company, to the Luftwaffe. He was indicted, okay? And then they let it slide. Not only that, Henry Ford, who was a bastard, was also he filed a lawsuit against the United States government for bombing his truck factory in Germany, where they made trucks for the German army. Okay. Oh. Yeah, and what else? He won the suit, and the United States government had to pay him reparations. You just when I tell you that, you go, oh well, you're a liar, man. You're a liar. You're just making this shit up. No. Nowadays, with the internet,
it's something to look up, for sure.
Yeah, it actually happened. So Prescott Bush was supplying gas to the Luftwaffe. Henry Ford was supplying trucks to the German army so they can kill your kids. What is wrong with this picture? Okay? You see? And that's why I say you got to stay tough, man. There's people, the world will roll over you. So that's kind of what me and Mike are doing with this rocket thing. We really just want the kids to just think right and realize you're in a great country and you can never pay these guys back that died. My dad was in World War II. He didn't die, but he came back wounded, you can never pay him back. You can't pay him back, man. You just can't. Nothing you could do. will make things better. Nothing you can do. So, and then every time you turn around, they go, we're going to, I'm seeing on the internet, we're going to go to war with Iran. For what? We got guys in Syria for what? You know what I mean? I'm sure the guys on the ground know the reason, but they ain't sharing it with you, so you can just go for what? I don't know, man. Just got to stop all that crap, bring all our boys home, and defend this country when they're at your shores. You know what I mean? Till then, forget about all these other countries. You don't need to tell them what to do. They know what they're doing. They've been doing it for thousands of years. You're like, and I don't want to get into a bunch of political stuff, but essentially that's kind of it. You know what I mean? You know what I mean?
Yep. Well, I think that's a lot of stuff, and I think we probably get wrapping this up. So I will include in the description for anybody the link to donate to Mad Mike Hughes if you want to help out him going to space, and you know how it's going to happen, mostly, and man, I want to see it happen. I hope for the best, and thanks a lot. Anything else quick to say at the end here?
Yeah, I will. I'll tell you that, anybody listening, that rocket that we're building, that spaceship is your spaceship. Okay, NASA's been around 80 years. How many people have been to space? See, and they're all Captain so and so, Commander so and so, Colonel so and so. Even Neil Armstrong, right? When Neil Armstrong was walking on the moon, I watched it live. I was 13 years old, I think. My mother was crying. We're on the moon, man. Can you believe that? And here's Neil Armstrong, and they say, Buzz Aldrin was a colonel, I think, at the time, or something like that. They didn't say anything about Neil Armstrong. You do a little information hunting on Neil Armstrong, okay? He was slated in the 1950s, before he got into Apollo, to fly the Dinosaur, which was an acronym for Dynamic Soar, which was a intercontinental antipodal rocket-powered bomber or a reconnaissance plane, one of the two versions. Okay, he was going to fly that. Pretty good for just Joe Blow from Idaho, right? You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. See, that's what I mean. See, that's what I mean. NASA's so military. Trump doesn't have to start a space force. Just pump more money into NASA. NASA is not going to take you to the stars. Not. The guys who are going to take you to the stars will be Bezos and Elon Musk. Those are the guys who are going to take you. You're going to have to do it privately. NASA's not going. Too busy putting weapons in space. Too busy trying to figure out how to take over the world. No, man, you're going to have to do it.
It makes sense. The American government has different reasons for what they do than a private entity would. So I think it's great that private companies are going to space, and I hope more of it happens and they're successful and they can build safety around it and do it quickly.
Well, if NASA really wanted to put you in space, this is when I was a kid. NASA, any program you asked them about, okay, now I'm a kid, right, 10, 12 years old, 14 years old, and I want to know about this satellite. They'd send you a packet of stuff in the mail free. Did you know that?
No.
Yeah, I still have a bunch of them laying around in my files. Yeah, I remember I wanted to know about this one satellite called Pegasus, and they would send you everything about that program, okay? Try that today. Okay, try to go. Hey, that rocket you just launched. Could you give me some data on that? Because I think I'd like to build something like that with it. I'm sorry, that's proprietary, and it goes to our contract. Right. They're not going to take you to space. You're not going to be floating around chasing your girlfriend around in zero G. Okay, you're not. It's not going to happen.
Like in the James Bond movie.
Yeah. Yeah.
Moonraker.
Right. And that's another thing I want to know. How many of those astronauts were doing the hokey pokey in space? Okay, who is it? Who is it? Come forward. I want to know about it. Right? You never hear about that. It's kind of proprietary. We can't tell you. But see, that's what I mean, man. NASA's like the NSA. Might as well be the NSA, right? What the hell, man? You're gonna have to do it yourself, man. Kiddos, you're gonna have to do it yourself. Join those companies. Join Elon Musk, work for him for coolie wages, work for Jeff Bezos, work for any of these stars, even Virgin Galactic, man, put that on the right track. You guys going to go to space, you're going to have to go yourself, like me and Mike are going to do. I don't see NASA sending us any checks. That isn't going to happen.
Yep. Man, that's awesome. Well, all right, Mike. Not Mike. Waldo.
Yeah, I know what you're
talking about Mike so much.
It's a pleasure.
Thank you, Waldo, and best of luck to you, and we'll catch you later. Thanks.
Yeah, take care of yourself. Bye.
Bye.